Hi, guys. Hopefully, you had a great Friday and you got something out of the Seder meal today. And hopefully, you're having a literal Good Friday, not just because it's Good Friday, but because your Friday is good. So, let's get through these practice problems 6.2 so you can enjoy your 3-day weekend, and we will talk about this on Tuesday when we come back. So if you have your worksheet 6.2 that we did for homework yesterday, it's going to help you if you get confused on any of these problems. Your directions: express each fraction or mixed number as a percent. You can look straight on your worksheet. This is the worksheet that we did, and it says express each fraction as a mixed number and a percent, and it shows you how to do it right here. So if you forget, I don't remember what I'm supposed to do for these directions and if they give me fractions, because as you can see, they give you fractions up here, and then they also give you fractions down here. So you really have to read the directions carefully in order to remember what you're doing. And it's the same thing is going to be on your test. You're really going to have to be careful to say, okay, if the directions say turn the fractions or mixed number to a percent, then I need to remember that this is where I times it by 100%. And then I just go ahead and redo or put it into a mixed number at the end. And then you're going to have to remember that even though it gives you a fraction as well, this one says express it as a percent and round to the nearest whole number. So make sure it's really important you take time to read directions. So please do that, and if you need to refer back to your worksheet in order to see the example that they give you for each of the directions, you could go back and just match up the directions. This one says express each decimal as a percent, so you could go over here and it says express each decimal as a percent, so that's the directions for that section. And then the next one is express each percent as a fraction in simplest form. On your worksheet on the third page, express each percent as a fraction in simplest form, and it shows you right here. So if you have any questions about this, please go back and refer to your worksheet, or you can also go back to our guided practice where it gave you examples as well. So we are right now on page 192 of your textbook, and we are going to try to finish practice 6.2. So I'm going to do the first one in each section for you, and then after that you can go ahead and do the remainder of the ones in each section on your own. So let's start with number 1. Express each fraction or mixed number as a percent. So it's starting with 3/5, and remember, we just need to figure out how can I make that into a percent? Well, I times it by 100% because, oh, actually, sorry, this one, the first one, we actually can take 5 and times it by 20 to make it into 100, and then that will give us a percent. So I would take 5 and I would times it by 20 to make 100. Whatever I do to the top, I have to do to the bottom. So I'm going to take 3 and times it by 20, which would be 60, and that would equal 60% because it is over 100. So hopefully you remember when we're doing our test that I need to look on the bottom and see if there is anything I can times to make 100. And then the timesing it by 100% that we did on our worksheet here was because the bottom number, the denominator, couldn't actually be timesed by anything in order to make 100. And so we had to times it by 100% and then turn it into a mixed number. So hopefully you remember that on your tests. If not, write it down somewhere, study it when you go back to study your tests so that you make sure you get that right. All right, moving on. There will be some in this section then that you will have to times by 100. You can see 3 doesn't come out to 100 evenly, so I'll actually do that one for you just because I'm feeling full of grace and mercy today. So we are going to times that by 100%, and that is going to give us, remember we times the top, which would be 100 over 3, and then we go and take that and put it into a mixed number. 3 into 100 is going to be really close. Let me get my calculator here. So 100 divided by 3 is going to come out to 33 with a remainder of 1, and the answer would be 33 and 1/3. So hopefully you got that answer, and we will move on to this next section here. Express each decimal as a percent. So let's go back to our homework, or you could go back to your guided practice problems a couple page back in your textbook, and it shows us whenever we're taking a decimal and turning it into a percent, we just put that number over 100. And remember, we did have problems down here where we had taken that number and put it over 100, which means our decimal is no longer there because we have moved it 2 places for that 100. So down here, if there's a whole number on this side, we just move our decimal place 2 and it would be 501%. So hopefully you remember that. So let's go ahead and do the number 7 together. This was number 1, this is 3, this is number 7. All right, so we are doing number 7 is 0.46, and so we would just move our decimal place 2 over, and it would be 46 over 100 is 46%. And then way down here on number 12, let's do that one together, is 8.9, moving it over 2. I would have to add a 0 there. It would be 890% over 100, or 890 over 100, which would make 890%. So here we had our 8.9. I moved my decimal place twice, then I put it over 100, which would make 890%. So hopefully you can see that. Moving on to the next one. We are going to say we are expressing each fraction as a percent and round your answer to the nearest whole number. So if we look back on our worksheet, trying to remind us of what we do in this situation, is it says express each percent as a fraction in simplest form, and it starts out with a mixed number, and we need to put it over in a improper fraction. Our improper fraction we then divide by 100, and whatever we divide, it's just looking on the right side, doing the reciprocal and multiplying. And so if we do that straight across, it came out to this, and we just reduced it. So let's go ahead and do that here. So let me fold my paper in half so that you guys I'm not covering up your answers here. So we're going to do number 19. And number 19 is 76 over 125. And if we're doing 76 over 125, we are going to divide that by 100, which just means we're going to take the reciprocal, and 76 over 125 times the reciprocal would be 1 over 100, because this is just like 100 over 1. And then if I do my math straight across, it would be 76 and 125. Excuse me, you guys are going to really have to bear with my voice here. 125 times 100 is just going to add 2 zeros onto the end here, which would make 12,500, and then we would have to reduce that since they're both even numbers. I could say 76 divided by 2, since they're both even numbers, is going to be 38, and 12,500 divided by 2 is going to be 6,250. They're still even, so I can divide by 2 again, which 38 divided by 2 is 19. And 6,250 divided by 2 is 3,125. So 19 over 3,125 for number 19. And then we are going to turn that into, because it says, were we doing, I'm sorry, I think I just did number 19 and I meant to do number 13. So here's number 19 if you want to skip down and write that answer. But the problem is it says expressing fraction as a percent. So round your answer to the nearest whole number. And so we need to turn this. We could actually take that down. Actually, since the directions are different, let's just scratch that out. And sorry about that. This is Mrs. Skeffer's cold brain again is not functioning as well. So we were doing number 13, I believe, or we already did number 7 and number 12. Now we're doing 13. Express each percent as a fraction in simplest form. So we're going to go 5.75%, and it is asking us to change that into a fraction in its simplest form. And if we look back on our worksheets or back on our guided practice problems, it's going to be on your very last page. It says express each percent as a fraction in simplest form, and this is where we just put it over 100 and move our decimal and add zeros to our 100. So we need to move our decimal 2 places. So it would normally be 575 over 100, but since I have to move my decimal 2 places, that will add 2 zeros down here. So then my answer would be 575 over 10,000, and then we would need to reduce that. And if we reduce that, I know I can do it by 5. 575 divided by 5 is 115. And then 10,000 divided by 5 is 2,000. I know I can still do that by 5. So I come out with 23 if I divide it by 5. 2,000 divided by 5 is 400, and that would be my answer. So let's move on to number 19, and we'll do it the right way this time. Sorry, I got my directions mixed up there. So on 19 it says express each fraction as a percent and round to the nearest whole number. So if we go back to our homework, here is what it says for that, and this is where we divide it by 100, which is timesing by the reciprocal. So we're going to take our 76 over 125, and we're going to these are actually not mixed numbers like on our practice. If you remember on our practice worksheet, we had all of these were mixed numbers. So this is just going to be a normal fraction. So we still need to divide by 100, which would just be timesing, by 1 over 100. Whoops, sorry, that should be a times. And so we would go 76 and then 125 times 100 is 12,500, and then we would just reduce. Since they are both even, let's just do the easiest and divide by 2. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So if I divide that by 2, it equals 6,250. I can still divide by 2, and 38 divided by 2 is 19, and 6,250 divided by 2 is 3,125, and it is asking us to turn it into percent. So we would need to, actually, I think that one, those ones let's go over in class because it's a little bit different than on your sheet.